Welcome to our deep dive. Today, we're going to be exploring the fascinating world of evolutionary theory.
Okay.
Specifically, how scientists explain the behaviors we see in humans today.
Right.
You might be surprised to learn that there's actually a bit of a debate on this very topic.
Yeah, that's right. Back in the late 1980s, two main schools of thought emerged, each with a different approach to understanding the roots of our actions.
Interesting.
Imagine it as two groups of detectives trying to solve the same mystery,
Okay.
but using different methods.
Tell me more about these different approaches.
One approach, known as the adaptiveness program, focuses on the immediate benefits of a behavior. It asks, how does this behavior help you survive and reproduce right now in your current environment?
So it's all about the here and now.
Yeah.
How our behaviors are helping us thrive in the present moment.
Exactly.
What about the other approach?
The second approach, called the adaptationist program, takes a longer view.
Okay.
Looking back into our evolutionary history, this perspective argues that many of our behaviors are shaped by adaptations. Traits that were honed by natural selection over countless generations to solve problems faced by our ancestors.
So it's like we've inherited a toolbox from our ancestors, filled with tools that were perfect for their challenges.
Yeah.
Even if they seem a little odd or out of place in today's world.
That's a great way to put it. Take the Westermark effect, for example.
Okay.
This is a psychological mechanism that inhibits sexual attraction.
Interesting.
Between individuals who were raised together in close proximity during early childhood.
So even if there's no biological relation,
Right.
the close bond formed during childhood
Yes.
acts as a sort of deterrent against romantic interest later on.
Exactly. And from an adaptationist perspective, this makes perfect sense. In our evolutionary past, close relatives living together was the norm.
Right.
Inbreeding, however, often leads to negative consequences for offspring.
Yeah.
Due to the expression of harmful recessive genes.
That's true.
So natural selection would have favored mechanisms like the Westermark effect to avoid these negative consequences.
It's like a built-in safety mechanism to prevent inbreeding.
Yes.
And promote genetic diversity.
Precisely. And we see this effect play out in interesting ways.
Oh.
For instance, studies of unrelated children raised together in Israeli kibbutzim.
Okay.
Communal living arrangements found that they rarely develop sexual attraction towards each other as adults. This supports the idea that the Westermark effect is triggered by early co-residences, not just by genetic relatedness.
That's fascinating. It really highlights how powerful these evolved mechanisms can be.
It is.
But you mentioned earlier that adaptations aren't always beneficial in every environment.
That's a crucial point. The kibbutz example actually illustrates this perfectly.
How so?
While the Westermark effect would have been advantageous in our evolutionary past, in the novel environment of the kibbutz, it leads to an outcome that's not necessarily ideal, a lack of potential partners within the community.
So it's like having a tool that was perfectly designed for one job, but might not be as useful or even counterproductive in a different context.
Exactly. And this brings us to a key distinction in the adaptationist program.
Okay.
It's not enough to simply observe a behavior and label it as adaptive or maladaptive based on its outcome in a particular environment.
Okay.
What truly matters is understanding the underlying design of the adaptation.
So it's like looking beyond the surface level actions to understand the deeper logic that drives them.
Right.
We need to uncover the why behind the what.
And to do that, we need to consider the environment in which our ancestors evolved and the challenges they faced. Think of our bodies and minds as data recorders, carrying within them the imprint of those ancient environments. Each adaptation, from our eyes to our immune system to our complex emotions, is a testament to the selection pressures our ancestors encountered.
It's mind-boggling to think that we're walking around with this hidden history within us, each of us a living archive of our evolutionary journey.
It is amazing.
But how do scientists even begin to study the past?
Well,
it seems like trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces.
It definitely presents its challenges.
Yeah.
But scientists have developed ingenious methods to piece together the puzzle of our past.
Like what?
We can use present-day environments that resemble those of our ancestors as models to understand enduring factors like the laws of physics, the prevalence of parasites, and the basic challenges of finding food and shelter.
So we can look for clues in the present to unlock the secrets of the past. That's clever. What else do scientists use to uncover these evolutionary mysteries?
We also rely on the principles of evolution as constraints. to guide our understanding of what was possible in the past.
Okay.
These principles, like natural selection and genetic inheritance, act like boundaries, helping us to narrow down the possibilities and make more informed inferences about our ancestors' lives.
It's like having a set of rules that govern the game of evolution, helping us to understand the moves that were made and the strategies that were employed.
That's a great analogy. And perhaps the most important tool we have is the study of adaptations themselves. By carefully analyzing the design features of an adaptation, we can work backward to infer the selection pressures that shaped it. For example, the intricate structure of the human eye tells us that our ancestors relied heavily on vision, suggesting they were active during daylight hours.
Makes sense.
And likely inhabited environments where good eyesight was essential for survival.
It's incredible how much information we can glean from these adaptations. It really underscores the importance of understanding the environment of evolutionary adaptiveness. The EEA that we touched on earlier.
Absolutely. The EEA is a crucial concept in evolutionary psychology. It's not about pinpointing a specific time or place, but rather a statistical composite of the selection pressures that shaped a particular adaptation. Imagine it as a tapestry, woven from the most relevant features of our ancestors' environments.
Like what?
The climate, the predators, the social structures, the challenges and opportunities that shaped their lives.
So it's like a blueprint of the evolutionary forces that shaped our species.
Exactly.
But if we're so influenced by the past, does that mean we're just robots?
That's a great question.
Programmed to repeat ancient patterns. Does free will even exist?
That's a fantastic question, and one that sparks a lot of debate. To answer it, we need to delve into the fascinating world of cues and how they connect our past to our present. Think of cues as triggers from our environment, be they sights, sounds, smells, or even complex social situations. In our evolutionary past, these cues provided vital information that helped our ancestors make decisions. Decisions that often meant the difference between life and death.
So these cues are like ancient whispers, carrying information from the past that still influences our actions in the present.
That's a poetic way to put it, and it's quite accurate. For instance, imagine our ancestors encountering a rustling sound in the bushes. In their environment, this could very well signal a predator lurking nearby. Natural selection would have favored those who reacted quickly and cautiously to such a cue.
Makes sense.
Perhaps by freezing, fleeing, or preparing to fight.
It makes sense that those who were more attuned to these cues and reacted accordingly would have been more likely to survive and pass on their genes.
Precisely. However, fast forward to today, and that same rustling sound might just be a squirrel scampering through the leaves. Our ancient brains, however, might still trigger a momentary fear response. Even though the actual threat is minimal.
So it's like our emotional responses are sometimes out of sync with the reality of our modern environment.
Exactly. And this brings us to the fascinating topic of emotions themselves. From an evolutionary perspective, emotions can be understood as complex programs designed to solve recurring problems faced by our ancestors. Each emotion triggers a coordinated set of responses. Tailored to deal with a specific challenge.
So it's not just about feeling happy or sad or angry. Emotions are actually prompting us to act, to behave in ways that would have increased our ancestors' chances of survival and reproduction.
That's a great way to summarize it. Think about the emotion of fear, for example. Fear motivates us to avoid or escape danger. It triggers a cascade of physiological changes.
Like what?
Increased heart rate, rapid breathing, heightened senses that prepare us to fight or flee. These responses would have been crucial for survival when facing predators, rival tribes, or dangerous natural events.
It's amazing how our bodies are so finely tuned to respond to these ancient threats, even though our lives are vastly different now.
It is remarkable, isn't it? And this logic applies to a wide range of emotions. Take disgust, for instance. Disgust is thought to have evolved to help us avoid contaminated food or contact with disease-carrying substances. The feeling of revulsion motivates us to withdraw from potentially harmful sources.
So what might seem like a simple emotion is actually a sophisticated mechanism for promoting hygiene and health.
Exactly. And what about an emotion like love?
Yeah.
From an evolutionary perspective, love, particularly romantic love and parental love, plays a crucial role in forming and maintaining bonds that are essential for raising offspring, ensuring their survival and passing on genes to future generations.
It's fascinating to consider how these powerful emotions, which feel so personal and subjective, are actually deeply rooted in our evolutionary history.
It is. And it's not just about basic survival. Emotions also play a crucial role in navigating the complexities of social life. Consider the emotion of jealousy, for example. Sexual jealousy in particular is thought to have evolved to address the challenges of infidelity and mate guarding.
Because in our evolutionary past, infidelity could have serious consequences for reproductive success.
Exactly.
Especially for men who couldn't be certain of their paternity.
Precisely. When a man suspects his partner of infidelity, jealousy triggers a host of behaviors aimed at deterring rivals, protecting his relationship, and ensuring his paternal investment isn't misdirected. These behaviors might include vigilance, displays of aggression, or attempts to make himself more attractive to his partner.
So while jealousy can be a painful and destructive emotion,
it can be.
It's essentially a defense mechanism designed to protect relationships and reproductive interests.
That's a nuanced way to put it. And this highlights a key principle in evolutionary psychology. We need to understand the function of a behavior or emotion within the context of the environment in which it evolved. What might seem irrational or maladaptive in our modern world might have made perfect sense in the EEA.
It's like trying to understand the rules of a game by watching it being played in a completely different setting.
That's a great analogy. To truly grasp the logic of our emotions, we need to step back and consider the challenges our ancestors faced and the strategies they evolved to overcome them.
This is all incredibly insightful.
Thanks.
But it does raise a question for me.
Sure.
If we're so influenced by these ancient programs, these evolved mechanisms, does that mean we have no control over our own emotions and behavior?
That's a question that philosophers and scientists have grappled with for centuries. And it gets to the heart of the debate about free will versus determinism. While our evolutionary past undeniably shapes our predispositions, our brains are remarkably adaptable and capable of learning and change.
So we're not simply prisoners of our genes or our evolutionary history?
Not at all. Think of it this way. You might have inherited a predisposition towards a certain personality trait, like shyness or extroversion. But your life experiences, your upbringing, your social interactions, and even your conscious efforts to change all of these factors can influence how that trait is expressed.
So it's like we're given a set of tools at birth, but we have the power to choose how we use them. We sharpen them and even create new tools altogether.
That's a powerful way to put it. We have an incredible capacity for learning, for adapting to new environments, for overriding our instincts when necessary, and for making conscious choices about how we want to live our lives.
It's an empowering thought.
It is.
But I do wonder if our emotions are these ancient programs designed for a different world, how do they guide us in the complexities of modern life?
That's a great question, and it leads us to the fascinating realm of how our emotions interact with our thoughts, our perceptions, and our decision-making processes. Think of it this way. Emotions provide us with a sort of internal compass, guiding us towards what we value and away from what we fear or find aversive. They highlight what's important to us, what we should pay attention to, and what we should avoid. In our evolutionary past, this compass would have guided our ancestors towards resources like food, water, and shelter. And away from threats like predators or hostile tribes.
So it's like having an internal guidance system. That's constantly evaluating our surroundings and nudging us towards what's beneficial. And away from what's harmful.
That's a great analogy. And while this system was honed in a very different environment, it still plays a crucial role in our modern lives. Our emotions color our perceptions, influence our memories, shape our decisions, and guide our actions, even if we're not always consciously aware of their influence.
That makes sense. It's like emotions are working behind the scenes, shaping our experiences and behaviors in ways we might not even realize.
Exactly. And this brings us back to the concept of cues. Remember how we talked about cues as triggers that activate specific adaptations? Well, many of these cues are directly linked to our emotions.
Give me an example of how a cue might trigger an emotion.
Well, consider the simple act of smiling.
Mm.
When you see someone smile at you, it often triggers a feeling of warmth and happiness.
Right.
This is because in our evolutionary past, a smile was often a sign of safety, cooperation, and non-aggression.
Makes sense.
It signaled that the other person was friendly and posed no threat.
So even something as simple as a smile carries with it a deep evolutionary history.
It does.
A message that resonates with us on an emotional level.
Precisely. And the same logic applies to a wide range of cues.
Okay.
A frown might trigger feelings of unease or suspicion.
Yeah.
A loud, sudden noise might trigger fear. The sight of a delicious meal might trigger anticipation and pleasure.
Right.
These are all examples of how cues from our environment tap into our emotional circuitry, eliciting responses that would have been adaptive in our evolutionary past.
It's like our emotions are constantly scanning our surroundings.
Yeah.
Looking for those familiar patterns.
Right.
Those ancient whispers that tell us how to react.
Exactly.
How to navigate the world.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And while this system worked incredibly well in the EEA, it's important to remember that our modern world is vastly different.
Right.
The cues we encounter today are often more complex, more nuanced, and sometimes even intentionally designed to manipulate our emotions.
Give me an example of how our emotions might be manipulated in the modern world.
Well, think about advertising.
Okay.
Advertisers are masters at using images, sounds, and stories to evoke specific emotions in their target audience. They might use images of happy families to sell products that promote a sense of belonging or security. They might use images of attractive people to trigger feelings of desire and aspiration. They might use fear-inducing messages to sell products that promise safety or protection.
So it's like they're hijacking our emotional circuitry. Using those ancient cues to influence our buying decisions.
In a way, yes. And it's not just advertising. Well, think about social media. Social media platforms are designed to keep us engaged, often by triggering emotions like excitement, outrage, or envy. We're constantly bombarded with images and stories that are curated to elicit a response, to keep us scrolling, liking, and sharing.
It's like we're living in a giant experiment on emotional manipulation.
It's certainly a thought-provoking way to look at it, and this highlights the importance of understanding our own emotional responses, of becoming aware of the cues that trigger them, and of recognizing when our emotions might be leading us astray.
So how can we become more aware of our own emotional landscape?
Mindfulness practices like meditation or journaling can help us to become more attuned to our emotions and to observe them without judgment. We can also learn to identify the specific cues that trigger our emotional responses. Are there certain people, places, or situations that consistently evoke strong emotions in you? Once you become aware of these triggers, you can start to choose how you want to respond to them.
So it's about gaining that space between the cue and the response.
Exactly.
That moment of awareness where we can pause. And make a conscious choice about how we want to react.
Exactly. And it's also about understanding the evolutionary roots of our emotion by recognizing that our emotions evolved to solve problems in a very different world. We can gain a deeper appreciation for their complexity and nuance. We can also begin to discern when our emotional responses are truly serving us well and when they might be leading us down a path that's no longer adaptive.
This has been an incredibly eye-opening deep dive. It's given me a whole new perspective on how my own emotions work, how they're connected to my evolutionary past, and how I can use that knowledge to navigate the challenges of modern life.
I'm so glad to hear that. Remember, our emotions are not our enemies. They're powerful tools that, when understood and harnessed effectively, can guide us towards greater well-being, connection, and fulfillment.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. This deep dive has truly been a journey of discovery.
It's been my pleasure.
And I'm excited to continue exploring the fascinating world of evolutionary psychology. To our listeners, we encourage you to reflect on your own emotional landscape. And to consider how the whispers of your evolutionary past might be shaping your experiences in the present. Until next time, keep diving deep.